Back here in the Bronx. All right, so what we're going to do right now is, everyone talks about the Green New Deal, they talk about politics. Let's just put that aside for a second. I want you to imagine there's 435 members of the United States House of Representatives who are down for the Green New Deal. And there's 100 members of the U.S. Senate down for the Green New Deal. And a president down for the Green New Deal. Not the world we live in, but just think about that world. We're going to just exist in that world for a little bit. I want to bring in Rhianna Gunn-Wright, who is the policy director of New Consensus. And for those of you who don't know, Rhianna, I think, has spent more time thinking about the Green New Deal than maybe anyone. Is that fair to say?
Probably close, yeah.
Okay, you're humble. You're humble, but it's true. You have been working on this a lot, and I want to bring in Congressman Ro Khanna of California. Good to have you here, Congressman.
Great to be here.
So, no political obstacles, okay? We're not talking about political obstacles, just technical feasibility, zero emissions by 2050, cut in half by 2030, right? Are those the goals, basically, around that?
Well, we got to start. I mean, look, there's some very pragmatic things we could do. Instead of the president yelling at the GM CEO on Twitter to create jobs, you could actually expand the electric vehicle tax credit, link it to domestic manufacturing, and open up a lot of those GM plants to make electric SUVs. You know, the Green New Deal, the Green New Deal is also the green energy race. China is making 50% of the electric vehicles. If you care about having that industry in the United States, why aren't we incentivizing that? Why aren't we building solar plants and wind plants? We could, and this $93 trillion number is crazy. It would, for $300 billion more dollars, you can look at the math, we would match China's spending and we could get to 50% solar and wind energy by 2025. California is already doing it. We're going to get to 60% by 2030.
Yeah, so the $93 trillion is the figure the critics use. Yeah. Is that the figure you're thinking of?
No. And first of all, you know, we wave a magic wand and we pass the Green New Deal resolution tomorrow. What happens? Nothing. Right. Because it's a resolution. Yeah, right. What our resolution that we introduced means is that it passes the House and it passes it passes the Senate separately. It just means that we make it a national priority. And it says that the scope of the solution must be on the scale of the problem. And so it outlines the ways that we can pursue that scope. But in order for us to actually pursue this agenda, we don't have to do it all at once. Right. But it outlines the ways and the hows of doing it.
But one of the criticisms is like it's a wish list, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess, Rhianna, someone who's spent a lot of time thinking about this, like, is it technically feasible? Like, do we have what we need right now, if everyone was committed and we can spend as much money as we needed to get the U.S. to meet these goals emission-wise?
Yeah, it's technically feasible. I think the key piece that people miss out on and why the Green New Deal is focused on investment is the workforce piece. This is going to create millions of jobs. Right now, our workforce system is very broken, right? And then we have these low unemployment numbers, but what that hides is that within certain communities, Black communities, Latinx communities, unemployment is still quite high. So there's a lot of slack in our economy. And so what the Green New Deal is about is making sure that we have the training, that people have the health care that they need so that they can move where jobs are, right? That people have universal family care so they have child care so they can participate. That's what sets the Green New Deal apart. And when that's in place and we have the full workforce of America at the ready, what we can do is unknown.
And the other note that I would have is that this is not just about what industries we're going to grow, but again, it's about how we're going to grow them. Right. And one of the reasons that we are really moving in the direction that we are moving in with good, dignified, unionized jobs is because a couple of weeks ago, the New York Times took a deep dive in the resolution and they said Green New Deal is technologically possible, but is it politically feasible? And we cannot allow for fossil fuel jobs to be better, more dignified, and higher wage with a stronger labor movement behind it than new energy jobs. And so we need to transition and have just transition, because what I'm tired of is us worrying more about the future of fossil fuels than worrying about the future of fossil fuel workers.
Right.
And Congresswoman brings up a good point. That is one of the reasons that the Green New Deal ties together climate change and income inequality, because the same types of investments that we're talking about in the Green New Deal to tackle climate change are the same investments we have needed to tackle income inequality from the very beginning.
Final question here for you on California is sort of the leader right now. I think it's fair to say there's a cap and trade. They've managed to, I think, bring down emissions, even like in absolute terms, right? Not in relative terms. Like emissions have come down in California. What are the lessons about the frontiers of the possible in your state?
Well, California is a leader, but so are states like Iowa and Texas. And I want to say that because this is something that states across the country can do. California has set a standard, 60% renewable energy by 2030. Every new home built in 2020 should have solar panels on it. There's real investment in creating solar farms and wind farms. This is something so eminently doable in our country. And the idea that the economics don't make sense is a myth. The Republicans, I mean, just in candor, if they were to come back and say, okay, we want to spend $500 billion, we don't want to do this, we can start a discussion. Right. But they're engaged in nonsense.
Exactly.
They're engaged in nonsense.
And, you know, and they wave this wand and they say, oh, it's going to cost, $1 bazillion. Like they sound like Dr. Evil, like $100 million. And how about we start by fully funding the pensions of coal miners in West Virginia? How about we start by rebuilding Flint? Let's just start
Right
now.
Brianna Gunn-Wright and Congresswoman Ro Khanna, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
The political obstacles and promises after this quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.